morning, everybody, and welcome to CannabizMD webinar, Innovation in Medical Cannabis Data and Technology. I'm Jacquie Cohen Roth, founder CEO of CannabizMD, as well as Sisters Social Enterprise TPAD. Our goal today is whatever your role is in the cannabis industry, that you're going to learn something today. You're going to be inspired, and it's going to help you be a better owner operator in the industry, healthcare provider, innovator, learn something as a cannabis student. During the webinar today, we're going to focus on a discussion of what is genetically modified cannabis, or GMO, that we're learning to avoid in our foods, synthetic cannabinoids, innovation in new delivery methods that deliver, as well as these delivery methods deliver valuable patient-centric data. And then we're going to talk about water-soluble technology in cannabis-infused beverages, which have a great, exciting future ahead. In just a bit, I'm going to introduce you to our panel members, which I'm going to be moderating a discussion with those folks for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to go into a Q&A period. Before we get started, I welcome my colleague, Head of Business Development for CannabizMD, Steve Landit, who's going to share some housekeeping notes for today. Welcome, Steve. And you are on mute.
Thanks, Jacquie, and welcome everybody. Yes, exciting to have everyone today. It's going to be a great, provocative discussion. Anxious to learn about the cannabinoids and maybe some new studies that have been showing us data and what's happening in the industry. So what we're going to do is, as you have questions, I'm sure that they will come up throughout the discussion today. Anybody, please place them in the chat. We will monitor the chat, and at the end, we'll have enough time to go through and get everybody's questions answered. And there should be some ability to have some back and forth as well. At the end, we'll also do a slight poll. We want to know what you're interested in, what your background is. That will help us shape the future for CannabizMD and the webinars and events that we host. And to that point, if anybody's interested at the end, we are always available. And I personally want to talk to you about sponsorships or seminars, or even participating in these future webinars with us. So that's it. It's going to be a great conversation. Glad you're all here today. Thanks, Jacquie, and back to you.
Thanks, Steve. Actually, we're going to kick right into that poll. Milan is behind the scenes. If you can pull up that poll, Milan, and gauge where folks are coming from within the industry, if that poll's ready to go. Maybe not. Okay. Well, we'll move on to our program, and we will, as Steve mentioned, we'll get to that poll during the program. So what I'd like to do now is give a shout out to our sponsor. Oh, here we go. Here's our poll. Excellent. Okay. So what is your primary focus in the cannabis industry? So are you actually we've got a little bit of a typo in here. Are you a cultivator, processor, dispensary, owner, operator? Your second choice, are you involved in science and research? Your third choice, are you an ancillary service provider? Are you providing a data resource, banking, financial resources, what have you, to the industry itself? Are you a healthcare provider? Are you a physician, a nurse, someone, again, who is patient-facing? And then are you exploring the cannabis industry? Is this your first entree into the industry? So if you would, please let us know and submit who you are. And we're just going to give a minute or so to let folks select who they are. And we can gather that data, because that's what we're all about today, is the value of data. Okay. All right, we'll be sharing that later on during the program. So let's get our discussion started. So the cannabis industry itself is the most innovative industry since the dot-com boom. I actually refer to the industry as three industries in one, where you have cultivation, which is agriculture, you have processing, which is manufacturing, then of course you have the dispensary, which is are the retail operations of the industry. In any industry, business, and especially in the cannabis industry, the ability to innovate and pivot is critical, and especially again in the cannabis industry, given the challenging regulatory framework that we're all operating under, as well as the competition for new products. Entrepreneurs in the industry are delivering products with cutting-edge innovation, and formulators are developing products with high-level science, no pun intended. Marketing demand in the cannabis industry is certainly driving innovation. And to that, I have some really interesting data points from New Frontier with the significant growth in the industry from when in May 2019, CannabizMD, we hosted an event, Cannabis and Innovation. That year, so this again, where are we? 3 years, if I can remember my math, through COVID, the global cannabis industry had a revenue of about, in US dollars, $15 billion. Almost 3 years later, there are dozens more US states that have established a medical program. 18 states in the US have now legalized adult use, and close to 70 countries across the globe have some version of a medical program in their country, whether it's CBD alone, THC, CBD, THC, and then a couple of countries actually have instituted adult use. Prohibition Partners reports that combined global sales of CBD, medical, and adult use cannabis topped $37.4 billion in 2021 and could rise as high as $102 billion by 2026. A data point that I wanted to share from New Frontier data is that we have now 268 million people have across the globe have consumed cannabis at least once since 2020. And a space that we are focused on is capital raise. And that has seen a growth of 118% over 2020. And that number, again, is from September 2021. So innovative solutions require new applications of existing technologies. This requires heavy investments in long-term research. Case studies on companies that are most successful with innovation demonstrate that these innovators have a centralized R&D team, and some of those folks are on the panel today. These folks come from diverse disciplinary backgrounds that underlie a company's core mission and technologies that we all can collaborate. Where I see the industry, the future of the industry, which actually we're here today, is that we have the intersection of the legacy cannabis industry, traditional healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry, and the technology industry. So again, our panel members each contribute with their own innovative solutions and unique perspectives on diverse backgrounds. So if you would, panel members, please come on screen. And I'm joined today by Andrea Baillo, who a Ph.D. Vice President of Research and Product Innovation for Open Book Extracts. Matt Kamps, a partner in intellectual property and cannabis law at Husch Blackwell. Jordan Medley, who's a director of product development at the RYAH Group, and Dr. Lola Handba, and Dr. O is as simple as for me to say. So welcome. If I'm going to kick off the conversation with, we are Women's History Month, and always the ladies go first, and then shout out to the new music, the new girl, that I thought we'd give a sassy start to today's webinar. So Dr. Baillo, if you would please share what you're doing in the industry, your background.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I'm Andrea Baillo. My background, I have a Ph.D. in molecular biology and genetics and cancer research. For 7 years, the focus was on breast cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, very heavy molecular biology, understanding small molecules and how they interact in the body. Following that, I went into craft beer. So that was the beginning of my CPG career, where I did fermentation science and quality management. Worked for a few different small craft breweries, and then switched over into marijuana, where I worked for Green Thumb Industries for about 4 years. Green Thumb, if you're not aware, is a large MSO that's vertically integrated. So they're in multiple different states, and that's the MS part of the O. And so they're in multiple states, and they are doing cultivation, production or manufacturing, and then also dispensing and retail. There, I was responsible for research and development, and was focusing on, like I said, like creating new products, and then also doing strategic technology. So bringing technology into those new products. Since then, I've moved to Open Book Extracts. Open Book Extracts is a bulk ingredient supplier, mainly the minor cannabinoids. We're a hemp-based company. So between the minors and hemp-derived delta-9 THC, that's our main focus. After that, we're doing, again, consumer packaged goods. So we're basically taking technologies that have existed in other industries and bringing them into product innovation for hemp products.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. O, if you'd please introduce yourself and what you're doing in the space.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and everybody. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Lola Ohamba, also known as Dr. O. My background is a clinical pharmacist. I'm a doctor of pharmacy. I tell people I deliver drugs, not babies. Anyway, I'm a clinical pharmacist with close to 20 years clinical experience in various fields, including the top Fortune 5 companies in the United States. Currently, I'm with United Healthcare. I've been with Walgreens, CVS. I'm also the founder of WCI Health. We are alternative health and wellness hub. We basically use education as tools to help people level up on their wellness journey. And recently, I joined the groups at Entourage Bioscience out of Canada. They are focused in psychedelics with ketamine for pain management. Apart from that, I am also an educator. I'm an adjunct professor at John Patrick University of Health and Medical Science out of Indiana. And I also do education master classes, cannabis as medicine master classes, psychedelic as medicine. I'm wrapping up my psychedelic as medicine master class right now. I'm a podcaster. I host Let's Talk Plant Medicine, Cannabis, Psychedelics, and Pharmaceutics, and also author of A Pharmacist's Guide to Cannabis, Perspective of a Non-Conforming Clinician. I'm a lifelong herbal user with deeply rooted in indigenous practices. Coming from my background, I was born in West Africa, so I'm bringing all that knowledge as my clinical background to help you level up on your wellness journey, saving money on your healthcare costs and avoiding adverse reaction. Glad to be here with these amazing souls. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O. Matt Kamps, the attorney on the panel, thanks for joining. Matt and I are both proud alumni of the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, the first graduating class with the Master's of Science, Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics. Matt, I just introduced a little bit. What else do you do?
Thanks, Jackie. And it's my panelists. Great to be here with you and to everybody on the call. Good morning. So I'm Matt Kamps. I've been practicing in law for about a decade. I work at a national law firm called Husch Blackwell. We have about 800 attorneys and we're full service. What that means is we help clients with everything, including their cannabis related needs. I'm a patent attorney by training. All that means is that I arbitrarily had a technical background in STEM coming out of undergrad, which allowed me to sit for the patent bar, which means I can help clients before the United States Patent and Trademark Office either secure patents, defend them, or try to get rid of improvidently issued patents before that agency. My undergraduate degree was in molecular and cell biology, and then I also earned my law degree both from the University of Illinois. And as Jackie said, in 2021, we were part of this inaugural class that earned that first Master of Science degree in Medical Cannabis Sciences and Therapeutics. And that was a really rewarding experience, and we were able to connect through that. My practice is very diverse. My cannabis clients have a variety of needs. A lot of them are corporate at this stage, as you can probably imagine, but I also come at things through an intellectual property lens. When I'm not dealing with cannabis clients, I operate primarily in the life sciences space and the pharmaceutical industry, helping generics try to get their products to market and challenge brand patents. So I litigate, I prosecute, I do transactional work, just kind of everything in my bag, and work with a great team of attorneys. My journey to cannabis, not the most fun story, but I lost my mother 3 years ago to metastatic breast cancer. And during her really bad bout with that illness, it was just kind of amazed me. She was at Northwestern here in Chicago, and the palliative care team was just more than happy to prescribe opioid after opioid, kind of scaling up to eventually she was on a fourth the lethal dose of fentanyl. Okay. And seeing that and how loopy it made her and how it didn't treat a lot of her other symptoms like refractory nausea and other things like that was really, really eye-opening, and that is the standard of care for people that are that ill. So she smoked, and it really helped her. Mm-hmm. And Illinois at the time had a very onerous process for earning a medical cannabis card. Thankfully, adult use is legal now, which removes barriers to access for everybody, patients and adults who want to use it on their own. But it was the one thing that helped. And I saw the benefit of the plant there, and through the grieving process, stumbled upon this master's program. So it was part catharsis, part wanting to continue learning and develop some subject matter expertise. But I've been able to integrate that pretty seamlessly into my practice, and I'm so glad that I did. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And many of us in the industry have been inspired to do what we're doing with personal stories. So thank you, Matt, for sharing yours. Jordan, welcome. And if you'd share what you're doing in the industry and how you got here.
Sure. So hi, my name is Jordan Medley. I'm the head of product operations at RYAH Group. We are a data technology company. I've been with the company since the very beginning, since 2015. So it's been a while. But we develop IoT products that service all sorts of routes of administration for medical cannabis, but also for other substances as well. But our goal is to create smart IoT products that can help bridge the gap in the analytics in terms of consumption data. So a lot of times people are complaining that there's not enough data, there's not enough information about how all of these different products are affecting different patient demographics, different medical conditions. And really what we've been relying on up until this point is saying, you have Blue Dream, here's how I felt after using Blue Dream. And it's just all anecdotal data, because Blue Dream grown by one grower could be different from Blue Dream grown by another grower. What does Blue Dream even mean? You have various cannabinoid percentages, you have various terpene percentages, you have different demographics. I mean, there's so many variables that it's almost impossible to be able to predict what the heck is going to happen when you try cannabis. And so our products try to bridge that gap. So we have basically a 3-part IoT ecosystem that applies for all of our products. Our products include our smart inhaler, which is like a dry herb vaporizer. We have a smart patch, and we're coming out with a liquid dispensing pen as well. But all of those products utilize a 3-part IoT ecosystem, which is number one, the product itself. The product can measure the amount of the product being consumed. The second component of that IoT ecosystem is QR coded product, QR coded medicine. We're a non-cannabis touching entity, so we partner with suppliers who could provide the product, but we give them the tools to label their strains with QR codes, so that when you use it with our device, the device will know the exact product that you're using along with those lab test percentages. And then the third component in our IoT ecosystem is our mobile apps. So our mobile apps let users dial in the exact parameters of their device. So for the dry herb inhaler, you could set a very specific temperature and 1 degree temperature intervals. You can select how much you want to inhale. For the patch, you can actually select when you want the patch to boost, which we could talk about later. But also, in addition to setting those parameters, you could use the apps to record how you feel, and that's what's transforming the seed to sale data into seed to consumption data. So now growers and partners can better understand, okay, people are consuming this product at this temperature, they're inhaling this amount, and here's how they felt. And all of it is anonymous data, but it's helping us better understand how different cannabinoids, terpenes are affecting everyone differently.
Oh, great. Thank you. So everybody's introduction underscores of the varied backgrounds that folks have come from and how they're applying. There is some lexicon just to be clear on. So Jordan spoke to IoT, which is the Internet of Things, that I first became aware of when I was in the traditional healthcare space in 2015. And essentially what that is Jordan spoke to specifically with the RYAH devices, is that you see it on your Apple phone. So it's capturing that data that's of value that we're going to be speaking about. We're also going to be talking about the difference between hemp-derived products and the more famous cannabinoid. Again, these are the molecules, whether it be CBD, THC, a couple of the primary and better known cannabinoids, again, which are the molecules. And these have effects, whether they're beneficial or not, or intended or unintended. So clarification on what comes from what are hemp-derived products and those that are coming from the cannabis sativa plant, which is the plant that delivers, I would say, and Andrea, maybe you're going to correct me in a bit, but has more therapeutic benefits. But we're going to talk about, again, these hemp-derived cannabinoids. And then Matt, as you would then, if you clarify, because actually there's news that's been circulated in the last couple of days regarding a particular ruling regarding the FDA and claims made by CBD companies. So what's the difference between patent law and trademark? And how is this applied in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, and I'll throw a third one in there, trade secrets too. So just to,
right.
to
okay.
the level set with the vernacular here, a patent's just a right to exclude. What that means, if you get a patent from the patent office, you get a nice shiny document with a little ribbon on it that says you've got a set of claims here, and you can prevent others from practicing or doing or making or using or selling what those claims delineate. Okay, so breaking it down simply, I patent a widget. If I see somebody else making a widget, I can sue them and potentially exclude them from the market. It is a right to exclude. It is not a right to do, which is why you can get patents on cannabis-related products, including those that have higher than 0.3% THC by dry weight. It's not limited to hemp. Conversely, a trademark is the use of something in commerce. Okay, so you have to show to get your mark from the USPTO that you are using a product or service in commerce. That's where the government will step in and say no. So we do not see federal trademarks on non-hemp derived cannabis products and the like. And actually, if you're going to go to the trademark office and try to get some federal protection, and I'm not talking about the state level protection because you can get state trademarks, I'm not going to get into that, but federally, you have to make a showing that you're not going to have something that exceeds the Farm Bill's definition of THC and industrial hemp. So you can get a trademark. The other universe here is trade secrets, and it's like it sounds. You have the secret sauce for making some kind of formulation or process of getting there. You keep it safely guarded. That exists in perpetuity for as long as you can keep it secret. The difference between that and a patent is if somebody reverse engineers it without resorting to like espionage or clandestine efforts, tough. It's theirs now. So a patent is nice because it's a right to exclude for a term of years. It's about 20 years, give or take, from the date of grant, which is nice. So those are kind of the three buckets. I operate in all three. But to get a patent, you're actually trying to get it right. You're going to the patent office and you're saying, I've got an invention and please give it to me. And there's kind of a back and forth with the patent office as to what the scope of that invention is. And the reason you get a patent as opposed to a trademark is the patent office isn't saying you can go out and do this to sell a controlled one substance or to help manufacture it, but you have a property right that maybe you could exclude others from the market sometime down the road.
So what you're saying, if I understand this correctly, then as a patent, you can patent a cultivar?
Yes.
Okay. And then that is a great lead in to then with Dr. Baillo and speaking to, if you would help us understand the difference between GMO, again, that's genetically modified cannabis versus what a synthetic cannabinoid is.
Sure. So I think like the easiest way, really, it's pretty straightforward when you ask that directly, because genetically modified organisms are in fact organisms and cannabinoids are molecules. So when you say GMO, like basically what we're saying is that maybe, I mean, basically none of the cannabinoids, at least that we're making or a lot of people are making, are genetically modified organisms. They are synthetic versions. So there's natural cannabinoids and non-natural cannabinoids. The natural cannabinoids can be endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids. The non-natural cannabinoids are something like delta-8 THC, THCP, THCO, THCC. I'm not sure if you guys are all familiar with that vernacular, but these are all the fun cannabinoids everyone's playing with the loopholes of the Farm Bill. But essentially, natural cannabinoids can be made from three sources. It can be agriculture, which is from a traditional biomass. Cultivation, it can be made chemically, which could be man-made chemicals that we use in the lab, or it can be biological, which would be using genetic engineering or genetically modified organisms, such as a yeast or microalgae or something else, a small organism that we're basically hijacking or taking advantage of its cellular machinery to start spitting out cannabinoids. But that cannabinoid, in fact, is just a cannabinoid like you would harvest from a plant. So, well, unless it's non-natural, right? So that's just where I guess really want to be clear. There's genetic engineering, which usually includes genetically modified organisms to make cannabinoids, but the cannabinoid itself is not genetically modified.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And so, and using the lexicon of the federal government, talking within the federal statutes, laws, regulations, it's marijuana versus what we're talking about cannabis, or just the lexicon that we're using here today. And under the federal law, the amount of delta-9 THC in a cannabis plant determines whether it's marijuana or hemp. So anything above 0.3% by dry weight is classified as marijuana, and that's Schedule 1 substance. And anything at or below 0.3% is hemp, which was legalized by the 2018 Farm Bill. So that Farm Bill opened up a brand new industry pretty much with the CBD. I mean, just an explosion. And then what that happened to do with what there was so much biomass in the market is that folks got clever and what could they do with this biomass? So there are outcome of that is what's become known and everybody's raising awareness is delta-8, which does have, it's purported not to have psychotropic effects, which it actually does. Also, the way that that particular cannabinoid is extracted or formulated can be dangerous. So folks like Dr. Baillo are doing it in a safe way. And again, you don't want to buy your delta-8 from a gas station, from a CVS. The best place to buy it would be in a dispensary where it's gone through the testing and you can get those certificates of analysis that it's a safe product. So while we're on the subject of these derived cannabinoids, Dr. O, do you see them having therapeutic benefit in that patient-facing space?
I mean, just like Dr. Baillo said, that these, even though they are made by this engineering, and I know I'm going to leave all the technical terms to her, the bottom line is that they're still going to have the therapeutic effect of the cannabinoid. But my own take when it comes to cannabis in particular is that where do we go with the entourage effect that we see in the whole plant? What about the topping, the phenol, the flavonoid? What I'm hearing from in the space currently is the fact, okay, the yeast fermentation of this cannabinoid. From what I've read, I mean, and I beg to, Dr. Baillo can call me whenever or correct me if I'm wrong in any part of it, is the fact that when you make this cannabinoid, it's a single molecule cannabinoid, say like CBN, when you make CBN, that will be CBN. It doesn't have the phenol, the flavonoid. Now we have to start adding those to it, probably based on patients' requirement or what they need. That might be a good idea. But at the same time, when we look at plant medicine, the beauty of plant medicine, and I'm coming from somebody that I've used plant medicine all my life. I mean, growing up, we use mango leaves to cure malaria. The bark of mango, you just brew it, you drink it, and we find out later that the hydroquinone that we will give you when you are traveling to these countries to as a prophylactic treatment for malaria is the same active ingredient that we have in that mango leaf. So this plant medicine and all these other cannabinoid, phytocannabinoid, terpene, phenol, flavonoid, they all work together in that entourage effect. And I know we use that entourage effect a lot. It doesn't just apply to cannabis, it's all botanicals. So, I mean, there's always a room for everybody. The other part I want to quickly throw in there before I pass the ball back to you is the fact that some of these genetically engineered products, they can be very potent. They can have high potency because of the way we modify them. But at the same time, we need to be aware that it's not everybody that is going to need 36% potent THC when we already have a really high one. What I would love to see is education in this space that some of these agents, there will be some class of patient that will need it. It's not going to be for everybody. Thank you, Jackie. I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, education, that's why we're here today is a data point that I regularly speak to is only 9% of medical schools in the US include endocannabinoid, the system, cannabis science at all in their curriculum, whereas the majority of Americans now have access to THC products. So the physicians and healthcare providers have been going to the patients who have the experience in the legal markets, or and it should flip, is that patients should have that expertise of their healthcare providers to call upon, because it's getting confusing. And it's great we have all these new products available to us, but it is confusing as when CBD, again, you go into any store and you can find a CBD product. So as far as innovation, and launching right into it with Dr. Baillo, so working on, I'm curious of the transition that the industry is, there's a lot of transition of folks coming in from the CPG. So you have those skill sets, whether it be as a scientist in the R&D, marketing, you're a CFO. So you're taking these skill sets, which are terrific, and applying them to a relatively new industry that's actually 5,000 years old, but there's just this incredible amount of innovation. So, transitioning from CPG to cannabis, what was that? Or, to cannabis, you were there, and then you've moved from cannabis to hemp-derived products. Is that the way to frame where you are?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how was that transition from CPG to cannabis?
Yeah. I mean, technically, I still like working at GTI, doing production, it is CPG. So I think the bigger part was more of lack of regulations, right? Nobody monitoring, especially so I started that in 2017. And even to see, I always think God, even 2 years ago, it was so different. A good example of that is even just when you first start making, in Maryland, let's say we were making cannabis and we have to use a metric system. I'm sure everyone here might be aware. There's seed to sale systems that states contract out. There's MJ Freeway. There's I can't remember, they're all BioLeaf, whatever. But metric is one of the more popular ones. And now they're actually making you regulate CBD as well. So when you buy CBD from open book extracts, it has to go into your seed to sale system. So anyways, I'm basically, lack of regulation was a huge transition, but it was kind of fun to be able to do whatever. And take lots of learning opportunities and take risks. The bigger issue was especially moving, the bigger reason I took the jump from marijuana to hemp was that I found myself wanting to reach further and be able to do things globally and international, around the globe, but nationally and across overseas, and hemp allows you to do that. So with marijuana, we're very limited. So the tight regulations and the federal status, or the control of the substance at this point still prohibits us from moving it around. Therefore, the opportunity to do research is very challenging. Obviously, you've probably seen more and more universities are getting involved, A, with either medical cannabis programs, or B, just doing research generally, San Diego. I don't know if you guys saw that, but University of San Diego just started talking about how they're going to be they've got $1 million from the NFL to do cannabis research on joint and pain health. And so that's what's now starting to happen. So just the evolution of it is not, it's that's just, I think, been like the most interesting part. And can't wait to see, like, now being a part of hemp and being able to move that around and watching marijuana become more, people getting more flexible with the research that's available to that. That's where I'm most excited, is just to be able to build these networks out and then apply them to the marijuana side.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, is taking these technologies, and just as you said, is you're now developing these innovative products and new ways with hemp derived cannabinoids, and then dependent upon what happens within the legal framework, that federal regulatory framework, what and when you can do something with marijuana. And then to that, we're talking about R&D, Jordan. So with the data that the RYAH devices are capturing, what sort of research projects has RYAH been part of, or is RYAH part of?
We're doing a pretty large pain study in the UK. It's a 50,000 patient study that's set to be conducted over the next 5 years. And what's cool about being a data technology company is that we can provide custom apps to do different things. So we have just general consumer apps that can give users the ability to set their own parameters. But for a study, a lot of times the difficulty of doing a remote study is you want everyone who's participating to be compliant with your protocol. So what we were able to do was we were able to create a custom mobile app with, custom branding and everything, but we were able to integrate custom questionnaires. So when you use the mobile app, first of all, it's built directly into their EHR system. So they don't even create a profile in our app. They're literally just patients from the clinic who are given a username and password from the clinic. They sign in, and then when they sign in, they automatically have to fill out a baseline just to establish their current health at the beginning of the study. And then when they go to use the product, the temperature and the amount that they need to inhale is automatically set for them, so that they're automatically compliant each time that they use our product. And then after each session, they have a post-session questionnaire that's mandatory to fill out before being able to use the device again. And all of that utilizes our QR code cartridges, which our flower supplier, RYAH, is providing. So when patients use the product, they scan the QR code of the exact strain that they're using, they have the protocol that they have to follow, and then they submit their questionnaires. In addition to the post-session questionnaires, they have weekly and quarterly questionnaires that are all mandatory. And what's unique about the study is that it's the first time where you can trace those questionnaires back to the exact session that they had. And if they have a troubling side effect, the clinic automatically gets an alert so that they can provide immediate assistance to the patient. They can either titrate the amount that they need to consume or just take them off the study. But this is going to help us understand how a Pedanios 8.8 is the strain that's being used. So it's a 8-to-8 THC to CBD strain, how it affects pain. And all these different participants in the study have various sources of pain. So we'll be able to better understand how cannabis at the temperature and the amount that they're inhaling affects that.
Mm-hmm. And how about, well, there's one thing, is there's another healthcare acronym in there, is an EHR. Dr. O, if you would, being again patient facing, you have the EHR and EMR, and you and I have had an offline conversation about the need that traditional healthcare providers need to know that their patients are using cannabis products. So first, if you clarify what an EHR EMR is. You're on mute, Dr. O.
Thank you. Yeah, EMR is basically electronic medical record. That is, especially in a hospital setting, that is the way we manage patients' record. So most of the time, the problem we have when especially in the hospital, is that patients are going through their healthcare provider, their primary care provider. Sometimes they go to urgent care, then they go to main hospital. So the same medication that is being dispensed to them in their urgent care or by the primary care physician when they go for emergency services, we are not able to reconcile all those medications. So you're having patients, sometimes they will be on, say, like lisinopril here, which is for blood pressure medicine. Then you have ramipril prescribed by their physician, primary physician. So you are using the same class of medicine for the same thing. So that's what we're seeing, they could result in overdose. Like Matt was talking about his mom, and I'm really sorry for what happened. Part of what we could use data for is to just kind of coordinate all this care. So when we are able to coordinate this care, we're able to save money, because now you don't need to prescribe the same medication. If they come to me as a primary care physician, I will be able to see what the emergency room has dispensed or the urgent care. That brings it down. That brings down cost for us. That saves lives. Because when we're talking about, for the example that I just gave, the lisinopril and the ramipril, this medication that if you take it too much, you will affect your kidney. And when I do reconciliation as a pharmacist, when I used to work in retail, many times we have to verbally spend hours calling primary care physician that this patient is on the same type of medicine. This is gonna be a problem for us. And when we are talking about opioid, I mean, average of 130 folks die on a daily basis. This is according to CDC data, and it's outside of COVID. We're talking about 130 people. And we're talking about depression, that we have over 300 million folks suffering from depression worldwide. So this could be a game changer if we are able to coordinate all this information, and it will help us to take care of our patients fast at the speed of light. Thank you, Jackie, for that question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And then Matt, with how about as we're capturing the data, whether it's from a recreational adult user or a study that Jordan has spoke to, what about HIPAA compliance and the concern for privacy and patient privacy?
That's a good question. And, you know, the better person to answer that would probably be my wife, who's actually a privacy attorney.
There you go. Where is she?
Downstairs working. But no, I mean, if I can sponge a little bit from what she knows. Yeah, as we compile different data streams from different sources, and I can speak mostly to this in the pharmaceutical context, when you're doing things like clinical trials and you have litigation, you get these documents, things like that. HIPAA information is safely guarded and held close. So I think the issue from a legal standpoint, and what we see is that privacy is the Wild West. Okay, we have a European privacy system in place, which is the GDPR. We have the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is implemented here in the US, but states have not really homogenized any of this, which is not surprising for the US. So as we continue to get data streams from different studies and different sources, and you have that patient information, it's going to be incumbent upon every entity involved in every step, whether it's somebody who's overseeing the study, where the data is collected, where it's stored, and how it is shared, that could potentially implicate the liability of anybody else involved. And it's going to be something very, very interesting to watch, because privacy is hot right now. You know, in the legal field, you know, as much as I'd like to think cannabis is like the big green wave, and there's a lot of legal issues surrounding that, and that's true. Privacy is so far and above that, which is creating a lot of issues right now. My wife, actually, she works for a credit bureau. So one of her big challenges is that you have these different products and different companies that are collecting data. The big questions and they ask are always, how is the data being used? Is it being anonymized? And could it potentially expose the identity or implicate the identity of anybody else who, or any person to whom that data belongs to? It also applies to healthcare information. So it's, like I said, it's going to be incumbent in this digital age to make sure that there are safeguards in place, that information does not get freely disseminated, or if it does, that it's anonymized in a way that doesn't trace back to the source.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that. To Dr. Baillo, so and this conversation with comments that Dr. O made, so whether it's where we're talking about both a full plant spectrum product, that you have the flavonoids, you have a variety of cannabinoids in there, the most famous single cannabinoid product out there and in the pharmaceutical industry is Epidiolex, which is CBD. It's an isolate, and it's used to treat children with the most severe epileptic disorder, seizure disorder, Lennox-Gastaut. So with the value, are there other cannabinoids that as isolates that have potential tremendous health benefits?
I think yes. So we're in the process of asking those questions as well, which actually comes full circle back to why we do biosynthesis and why we're synthetically creating cannabinoids, because they're produced in such low quantity that it's hard to identify what they would do if they're at the same quantity that people are taking Delta-9 THC. Mm-hmm. But so what we've done is we're also engaged in clinical trials. Ours is around 1,800 people, and we have 6 different arms. And we're doing a pain and joint health study. We're doing a sleep study, and then we're also doing an energy focus study with different minor cannabinoids that have we think might participate. When every single one of those studies, we are including a full spectrum. So we'll highlight specific cannabinoids or combinations of cannabinoids, or combinations of cannabinoids with a coactive. And then we say, okay, like, hey, we're going to do 5 milligrams of this, 5 milligrams of that. And then we'll do it with or without a coactive maybe, and then we'll do it with full spectrum oil. So I really don't fully know. I suspect, I don't know, like, we'll see. Like, I think like that it's very likely that it will impact the effect. But we don't really know, like, when you give high concentrations of minor cannabinoids, how they're going to cause and what kind of different effects they're going to cause. So I don't think I really fully answer that, but basically what I'm saying is it's still under investigation.
Sure.
I also want to I always love to bring this up. It's my favorite topic. As everybody who I work with knows that really on how you consume your cannabinoids too will be really critical. Because if you're vaping it, you're getting the native form of the cannabinoid, or maybe not necessarily native, but the non-metabolized form, versus if you're eating it, you're going to be going through metabolism. So, and then if you start incorporating technologies, you're actually preventing some of that from happening. So all of that is very critical as well. So with that said, I don't know, but I think yes. I think full spectrum will have an effect. I kind of hope it does, but yes. We'll soon find out.
Yeah, I mean, and then taking these and then this is what with Jordan and the value of the data derived from the RYAH apps, and with working in collaboration, perhaps what you're doing, Dr. Baillo, is creating, for lack of a better word, a cocktail that you have, the perfect mix, that here's somebody that needs that application for sleep, where I was listening to folks talk about a CBN, one of the minor cannabinoids, getting a lot of attention for sleep benefits, but does it act as best on its own, or do you need, again, that entourage effect that it's working in working together with other cannabinoids as well as the terpene? So with these delivery methods that we're talking about, and it's very interesting that we've had a conversation of what you can talk about, Jordan, is that we have those what everything old is new again, where there's transdermal application that we have that folks are familiar with, say, for example, in a lidocaine patch. And Dr. O, if you would explain transdermal application, what that is, and then Jordan, I'll ask you a question to tie this all together. So Dr. O, if you would explain transdermal.
Yeah, Jordan and I were talking earlier about the lidocaine patch, and when we talk about transdermal, what comes to mind is our fentanyl. But I totally agree with Jordan when we're talking that lidocaine patch, that ideally is supposed to be a topical. It's not supposed to cross through the layers of, we have up to like 3 layers of dermal skin layer. And basically what that does for our skin is a protection. It's our first line of therapy against bugs, against all kind of crazy stuffs going on there. So transdermal lidocaine ideally is supposed to be topical, localized. What that means is that where you apply it, that's where it's supposed to work. But it depends on what medium you are. If you are wearing a clothes, a thick cloth like a coat, if you are in a heated environment, that's going to affect how much of that lidocaine is going to get in your bloodstream. Ideally, it's not supposed to get straight into the bloodstream. It's just supposed to help on that area. So the environment that is used is a major. But when we talk about transdermal patch, as in the case of fentanyl, basically what that does is that this medicine has a kind of specific layers that they use to make it. And I know Dr. Baillo will know much about the actual formation of that patches. And that medium is supposed to release the medicine, the opioid, to your body system, straight into your bloodstream. It doesn't pass through the liver. It goes straight into your bloodstream. This is one of the best route of administration when it comes to, especially when it comes to pain, because all it does is go straight into your system and you are able to get that effect. Second to it, probably in the same range, will be our anal route, the route of administration that when we are using the anal route. Other than that, it's very fast, it's very, very effective. It's one of our big guns when we are talking about pain management and other ways we can use it. The other thing that comes to it is that we have to be very careful of what kind of agent we are using that system, that route of administration to dispense, because it's going straight into your bloodstream. Unlike, say, if I'm taking my cookies, it's going to be broken down and all that delay system. This is straight up. So if it's too strong, if what I'm dispensing is too strong, it can have a negative effect as well. But it's one of the big guns that we have. And when we come talking about how botanicals, I feel like conventional medicine have already done a lot of the hard work for us. We can tap into that science of conventional medicine to bring it to our side in the botanical, in the plant medicine space, and begin to work with that. But we're gonna need people that are really skilled, that actually know how this drug works, the route of administration, and all that is gonna be key. It's not just gonna be, oh, it's medicine, oh, cannabis is medicine. How does it work? What do you mean by route of administration? You have to actually know how the route of administration is working. Dosing, like Dr. Baillo said, is gonna be a major game changer. I tell people when it comes to cannabis, it's all about your dosing and it's all about your route of administration. Thank you, Jackie. That's a great question.
Thank you. And so to Jordan, with these, with the smart delivery method that you have, and I'm not even going to use the word transdermal. So if you would explain that, and then also to everybody, it's what I don't know if it's a challenge, but where RYAH recently was certified the smart inhaler as a medical device in Canada. But with that comes very clear restrictions on how you position what the inhaler does. You know, can't use the D word that we're all talking about, dosing, and then segue that, Jordan, into the patch and what the lexicon is in the space as a medical device.
Yeah, so, you know, we're a data technology company, and our goal is to better understand how different products through various routes of administrations are affecting different patient demographics. And when you're talking about patches, there are all sorts of variables that can play a role in the effects that someone experiences. So first of all, you're talking about the application site. So you could put a patch on your wrist, or you could put a patch on your stomach. And where you put that patch will play a role in the effects that you experience, because you have the skin layer, but you also have the fat as well that the medicine needs to go through. And so where you place the patch can have, you know, it could determine how quickly you feel the effects of the patch, as an example. So if you put it on your wrist, that has a much higher likelihood of giving you a more rapid onset of effects compared to if you were to put it on your stomach, where you're just increasing the barrier. So the smart patch is really the main controller that it does is it can modify the temperature that the patch that it connects to gets to. So Dr. Ohamba was talking earlier about how the temperature can modify the absorption rate of the formulation. And that's what our smart patch aims to control. And you'll be able to do that with the mobile application that you connect to. So with the mobile app, you'll be able to control when the patch brain activates that heat. And the goal is to take better control over the release of that formulation. The other factors that come into play besides temperature are the formulation itself. So cannabinoids are just very big molecules that sometimes have a very difficult time penetrating the skin. And carrier agents can help with that. Heat can help with that. So we try to do research as to what size those cannabinoids need to be in order to get through effectively. And then you also have the release liner that can control it as well. So for like a reservoir style patch, you could have the release liner that's the layer that connects the patch to the skin. And that release liner could have different porosities that can also control the rate of release. So patches are very complicated. There's a lot of nuance to it. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to develop this product, is to just gain better insight into how all of those variables could impact the experience that people have.
Thank you. And so, Dr. Baillo, this is, you said, your favorite topic to talk about. So do you have something, before I ask you, what are the primary delivery methods that you consider? Do you have anything to add specifically to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, because so patch efficacy is something that I think my team must have done research on for probably 4 years. And so I'm just curious too, is so how you guys understand efficacy of the patch, like if you're doing, what kind of testing you're doing to know that you're actually getting the cannabinoids, because off the patch, that was like the biggest challenge we always have had, is getting the cannabinoids to actually leave the patch. Like we could wear the patch and the cannabinoids stay on the patch.
Yeah, so you could do like loss testing, where you could take, I'm blanking on the term, but it's essentially like fake skin, and then you could apply the patch to it. And so what you could do is test the patch after use, and then you could test the amount of formulation that was on the skin. And we're actually working on that process with the University of Milan as we speak. So it is really complicated, and there's so many variables that can control it, but you do need to do some testing in order to figure out like what's the right combination of all of those factors.
Right.
Are there different sizes, Dr. Baillo, of these cannabinoids? So is one more permeable, or the permeates better than another?
Not from my experience so far, but so we also did some like pig skin testing, and we would do like the classic little tape strips. And then there's also, I think, they're like Franz cells, I think, that you can do, which get a little more pricey, but it was always, we could get some delivery, and we tried, all different types, but I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, so it was, I don't know if one cannabinoid is better than the other. Like typically there's the 500 kilodalton rule to be able to get into the skin, and THC should be able to get in there, but it's not, for me, I always hypothesize, and Jordan, you probably know better, working with this so much, but I always hypothesize that it's just because we couldn't get out of the patch. So the key was get it out of the patch, so then it'll go into the skin. So that's where we always started being like, let's just do the spray-on patches, because those we could, those would absorb.
Exactly, and that's why we're trying to add heat to help increase that. And there's also other things that you could do. There's like nano-emulsion, where you can make the particle size smaller. So there's all sorts of ways to get patch therapy to be more effective, because it is kind of a problem where you could buy a patch and it could literally just do nothing, because all of the material could just stay in the patch itself. So that's something that we're trying to correct with our device.
Well, love to get a sample of that smart patch.
Yeah.
And then to that, Dr. O, I know myself as a patient today, I am sitting with my back seizuring. We're talking about lidocaine patches and chronic pain. And I've tried a cannabis, medical cannabis patch in the past. I didn't find it very effective. Have you been treating any patients, or your experience with patches that are in market now, Dr. O?
For me personally, I don't treat patients. I do more of a consultation. I'm a cannabis psychedelic consultant. Based on my background as a user, as a herbal user, as my extensive clinical backgrounds, I advise companies. Here in Florida, pharmacies, we are not dispensers. We don't dispense that. But so, I mean, when I do my rooms, like Clubhouse room, I just see folks come in, and I'm not sure if it's that effective for people yet. I don't know how the patches are working.
Dr. Baillo, back to you on, so your favorite topic. What do you think, what delivery method is the most exciting for you?
Like I think the water soluble is the most exciting right now, because beverages are the fastest growing, ready to drink beverages are the fastest growing section of the business right now. So not only from like a viable commercial opportunity and revenue driving opportunity, but also from a research standpoint. I think that by people starting to actually take something sublingually, or not even sublingually, but similar to sublingual or similar to vaping, where they're going to be able to avoid the first pass liver metabolism. I think that by doing that, we're going to start to see people are going to feel differently than when they were taking a CBD gummy. So I'm excited to I'm really trying to explore that just from either using mouse models to do behavioral studies and then tie that with molecular biology studies to see molecules up and down regulated. So that's kind of the path we're going down to understand the difference between when you consume, how you consume cannabis and what active molecules you're actually getting. And then even beyond that, the other fun thing is just to know what receptors those are interacting with. So that's what water soluble is my most exciting.
Fun with cannabis science. So would you briefly explain what we're talking about with first pass? So that's when you ingest the food. So take it from there, and why the concern about first pass metabolism, particularly with medical.
So it's very much just like not any other drug, but a lot of drugs, especially this one, is a lipid. So it's going to spend some time in the stomach and in the liver getting digested. So typically it's very apparent when you consume THC. It's probably less apparent when you're consuming other cannabinoids because they have less intoxicating effects. But THC, it's pretty clear that when you smoke it, or if you're taking it in a beverage, because they are doing water soluble. And just so you know, not all water soluble cannabinoids avoid first pass liver metabolism. There are ones that are just soluble, but here and there, standardly, the main players in the game are producing liposomes, and they're allowing it is bypassing the liver. So basically if you start eating a gummy, it's getting absorbed through mucosal layer in your mouth, getting through your esophagus, and then it goes into your stomach, and then through your liver, and then it's getting digested down, broken down into smaller particles. That being, the first one was getting hydroxylated. So it'd be 11-hydroxy THC, at which point that would then go into your small intestines, gets absorbed, and then it goes to your heart again and loops back around. And then it goes through a second pass, and then the third pass, and then that's what's getting excreted through your urine. So this would just avoid that. And then you go straight into the liver, straight into the bloodstream, and then you're getting exposure of that form of the cannabinoid that you would get when you're smoking or vaping, as compared to, or even through a topical, like Dr. O mentioned, and as compared to eating it. So there's going to be very real and very different. And we know that because if you eat something, it takes an hour for it to kick in, right? Versus if you vape something, it's 5 seconds, it's immediate, right? So the onset time changes, the amount of cannabinoids that can get to the brain changes. So it's bioavailability, absorption, all of those things are going to be affected by consuming things that are water soluble and avoiding first pass to the liver.
Yeah, so water soluble. So when we're talking about the most exciting space being beverages, and what's going on in that space? And you and I have talked about some big players out there that in the traditional CPG space, like a Nestle or whomever. So do you have awareness of what's going on, what they're focused on?
I mean, we do know that some of these bigger players, these CPG players that we're all very familiar with, and that we consume products from on a regular basis, are definitely playing with cannabinoids. But I don't think, and Matt, maybe you can jump in here too, but I don't foresee anything happening in any real way until there's some FDA regulations. And so at this time, like, it doesn't make sense. It's probably too much of a risk for any big for any of these big CPG companies to take, to even consider playing with or launching cannabis. I know people are doing topicals, but topicals are not regulated by the FDA, so that's why you see topicals all over in grocery stores. Kroger just announced that they're launching a topical. But the actual food and beverage, and safety concerns, like, that's just not going to happen, I don't think, until the FDA comes in. Which could happen soon. They just put on, they just did hire a new commissioner or
right, who actually, Baxter and him, cardiologist, he actually has recommended cannabis. So we could get some positive traction with the new head of the FDA, right? Fingers crossed.
And just one other thing to add in there too, just for everyone's, just for their knowledge, is that CBD is very unlikely to even get into this space and regulated by the FDA because of Epidiolex. We like Charlotte's Web has tried, multiple different companies have tried to get CBD to be considered to be regulated by the FDA, but because of its use as a drug in Epidiolex, they've kind of excluded that. So it seems likely that CBD won't have that opportunity, but all these minors will.
Interesting. Yeah, Matt, if you would speak to that and then more.
Yeah. So I'm looking over on my screen here. I've got my little nifty patent query up that pulls data from the last 10 years I have a cannabis centric search query. And while Andrea was talking there, I actually plugged in and narrowed the terminology to include beverage or drink. And I came up with 150 hits just in US patents and patent applications alone that have either been published or issued in the last 10 years. Some of the names here, just to give you a sense of what people are trying to patent, we've got packaged frozen cubes of cannabis juice. We've got nano emulsions of cannabis formulations. We've got water soluble cannabinoid beverage compositions. The assignees of these patents, and that's who owns it, range from individual inventors to also beverage companies that I'm looking at here. We got nutrition therapeutics, hexo operations. We've got high beverages, canopy growth. So it's a broad spectrum of entities that, to Andrea's point, I don't think they're going to do anything because there's a huge regulatory specter looming over some of this stuff while it still remains a Schedule I substance. If we're talking about non-hemp infused beverages, and even those beverages, there might be issues. But people are stashing acorns, is what I like to call it, because they're banking on the fact that this 20-year term that they could get from a patent standpoint will be enforceable somewhere down the line, because they see that the green wave, while it's happening, the tipping point is inevitable here. As more and more states and large states legalize, presumably the Biden administration they've got 3 years to get something done meaningfully in that area, whether it's a descheduling, completely a rescheduling. And in the interim, people are tinkering and they're going to the patent office and they're trying to carve out how big that fence and that right to exclude is. But Andrea's absolutely right, Jackie, you're right. I mean, it's a huge space, and it's just I could go through iterations of this query here and play with it to get to cast the net appropriately, but just messing around with it for 5 minutes or 5 seconds or whatever it was, it shows you that it's a hot area.
Right. And alluding to what you had said, is last webinar, we spoke about federal regulation, deregulation, what it looks like, how we're going to get there. So, that comment that you made, Dr. Baillo, about CBD and the FDA, would you clarify that with Epidiolex, make it a bit clearer what that means, that the role that Epidiolex has had in FDA regulations regarding CBD?
Yeah, I mean, Matt, do you want to take this, or I'm happy to take it, but because you're more the lawyer, probably. But I mean, essentially, the way I understand it is just that so it happened, I think, even just I think it was this past fall is when the applications came in and they were all denied. Right. And essentially it was showing toxicology. I mean, people are investing a ton of money in these businesses. Even we are doing this right now. We are doing toxicology studies. We are doing stability. We are investing a lot of money into these cannabinoids to show that they're stable and safe. And then you can go ahead and show the FDA, here, this is, even generally recommended as safe, right? Grass. And then with all the studies you do, even on your own, you can do, sorry, I'm jumping, not totally answering the question, but you can jump in and just do self-claimed grass. But because Epidiolex has used CBD isolate as a drug, it is something that the FDA does not regulate. They're not going to regulate that in food. and because of its drug status. So probably someone else could explain this a lot better, but because of its drug status, it is not something that they are, that's the response each time. This is a drug. It has been shown to be a drug that treats a condition. Therefore, this is not something that we're going to allow people to put into a beverage and serve around, every single Kroger.
So I've seen, at first I was traveling in California and I saw CBD infused beverages a couple of years ago. I mean, are they legit?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm sure you guys can even speak to the topical side. Like I remember when we first started doing the patches, we grabbed some unnamed brand patches and we ran them through HPLC and we were like, oh my God, there's no cannabinoids in here. Or they're advertising 20 and there's like 2. So like, again, it goes back to like really the having the C of A doing that work.
Right.
But even beyond that, no, I think like right now we're doing CBD beverages that are being, put into Whole Foods and stuff like that. Like, it's not that people aren't doing it, people are, but like I said, if you want Pepsi, Coke and Nestle to play, like, I think that's going to be a different game. Like people are obviously always playing in the gray space. Like it's a gray area. We're playing in it.
Right. Matt, do you have anything to add?
Couple things. Yeah. So in terms of the big players,
Sure.
Yeah, they're going to jump on board as soon as it's convenient for them to do so.
Right.
In the interim, whether it's by getting their own intellectual property or gobbling up other portfolios that exist, that's going to happen. The more and more legalization we have and clarity around this. With respect to whether these things work, Andrea mentioned HPLC, that's high performance liquid chromatography. So you're passing your chemicals through and kind of seeing what's there. I do think there's a bit of a Wild West aspect of this. We've got really good regulatory attorneys at our firm. And this is just a constant issue for the cannabis clients that we have is, if you get a nasty gram from the FDA, being able to either show that you're not something that's being ingested, that you're not in the food and beverage space, that you're a cosmetic, that you have what you say that you have in there, it's a huge issue and a huge sort of contention with the regulatory aspects of this. And with respect to Epidiolex, Andrew's absolutely right. It's a drug. And with the drug came clinical trials, came proof of efficacy through many onerous steps to get that drug to have FDA approval. And that is the flag that they can wave. And that's GW Biosciences, right? That allows them to differentiate themselves from other companies and other things that might have issue. It is like any other drug. It's a chemical compound. It's isolated. It's homogeneous. It is like aspirin. Essentially, that's how the FDA views that.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to wrap this up and then open it up to the Q&A and everybody that's here is if you would jump into the chat and share where you are, what your focus is, and this is your opportunity to get to know each other a bit. I'm going to ask each of you to wrap up this part of the program is what do you think is the most exciting, innovative space in the industry right now? So Dr. O, I will start off with you.
I think the yeast fermentation is really gaining ground. Filament and some other company. I was in Global Cannabis Intelligence Summit earlier in the year, and there were a couple of companies that are really into that. So I'm gonna be looking at what is going on in that space. And my cell liposoma formulation is going to be huge, as well as what Jordan is working on. I've seen a couple of apps out there trying to do similar stuff. I think whoever does that right is going to be huge because of the need that we have in the medical space of being able to reconcile patient information so that we can have an effective way of managing their medicine as well as their disease state. Yeah, right. It's an exciting time to be in plant medicine.
Yeah, and I mean, so you spoke to the value of the data and what Jordan RYAH is capturing is both the very powerful patient data as well as the information from the cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenes, what is in each particular product. Before we transition to somebody else, Dr. O, if you would briefly explain what the yeast fermentation means.
The yeast fermentation basically was what Dr. Baillo was saying, like they take this yeast, which is an organic compound, And if say like you have a DNA for CBN, you incorporate it into the yeast, and the yeast, because of the way they multiply, they just start producing gazillion amounts of CBN for you. And part of what companies are talking about using it for is that using this compound, manufacture it in a large quantity, then you will have raw materials for companies like Nestle, like all these folks sitting on the sideline waiting for everything to click so they can jump in. We're gonna need some of this science because we don't have enough soil. We don't have enough land to grow the kind of cannabis that all of us are gonna use. It's just like psychedelic space. We're not gonna be able to grow all the mushroom that we need to manage over 300 million patients. So we're gonna need modern technology, but at the same time, it still comes down to HIPAA is huge when it comes to collecting data. It's a big deal. So it comes to education, and that is really what I'm focused on, predominantly education, bringing that knowledge, telling folks that it is medicine. And just like you're not gonna go over the counter and grab Tylenol and gulp it down your throat, you can, cannabis is medicine. We have to respect and treat it as such. Thank you for this great program.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Baillo, you are jumping. Let's go.
I am jumping because I think you just brought up such a good point. And
yes,
I also excited because I get to bring up a topic, one of my not my favorite topic, but one of my coworkers' favorite topics, who brings it up every chance that he gets. And that's trichops. So in order to make all of the cannabinoids that we want to provide for people and put them into all of the consumer packaged goods that people get at the grocery store or anywhere else, there's no way that it's going to be feasible to do that growing hemp. Other options, biosynthesis, like she mentioned, or more tricrops. So that's utilizing how do you say it, the fiber, the seed, and the flowers. So all we're taking right now is the flower, but like growers, agriculture, like that's a huge part of this industry too, is getting agriculture to come together here and like start making more hemp-based products and using all parts of the plant. Otherwise, it's just not going to be feasible.
Right. And we don't talk much about the parts of the plant have huge efficacy, you know, and value. And again, this industry goes back 5,000 years, whether you're taking the roots, making teas, I'm not hearing, tapping into or different parts of the plant. Thank you, Jordan. You're there doing product development in an exciting space. What do you think the exciting future holds?
One of the projects that I'm really excited about is to move the conversation forward with dry herb. I think not a lot of people really understand the specialness of dry herb. I think Dr. O was touching on it earlier when she was talking about just being able to treat patients with mango leaf. And cannabis is a crazy plant. Every single mammal on this earth has an endocannabinoid system, right. And cannabis is like the only plant that we know in existence that has high concentrations of cannabinoids that can modify the endocannabinoid system. And on top of that, it just has a variety of flavonoids and terpenes that, are found in other fruits and plants, but usually fruits and plants only have like one or two, whereas cannabis could have, hundreds. So it really is an amazing plant. And the cool thing about vaporization of dry herb is that you can every cannabinoid and terpene has its own boiling point. And when you vaporize the plant, that just means that you're bringing it up to a temperature where you're activating those boiling points of those cannabinoids and terpenes without reaching the smoke point. So you're able to consume all of the healthy parts of the plants that bring people that healing effect without any carcinogenic smoke. And I just think that's so cool. And what we're working on right now is we're trying to elevate the conversation when it comes to dry herb vaporization to better predict the amount of milligrams of THC and CBD and even these minor cannabinoids and terpenes that people will inhale. Because our device, it really captures all of the data points that allow us to make that estimation. Because with the device, you can control the exact temperature that the device heats to. With the QR code, the exact lab test percentages of the flower And with the volumetric airflow sensor, you know how much everyone is inhaling at that temperature. And so we're conducting a series of tests right now with the University of Milan using an artificial lung to test various different strains at different temperatures and volumes inhaled, trap that vapor via simulated inhalation, lab test it, and then cross-analyze it with a loss test analysis of the plant. So you get to see like how much THC, CBD, etc. was extracted from the flower, how much was actually inhaled and measured in that artificial lung. And I just think that it'll bring a lot of clarity on the whole situation, and it'll make vaporizing plants a lot more predictable and a lot more precise. I think it'll just help a lot of people. So that's the project I'm really excited about. I know it's kind of company centric and not really a development within the space in general, but that's just what I'm very excited about at the moment.
Great, thank you. Matt, you see a lot, and what do you see?
Yeah, I'll answer the question a little bit differently. I think one thing that I'm really interested to see is the continued encroachment of major pharmaceutical companies into the cannabis space. In the last year, we've seen a lot of activity with household names like Pfizer that are placing billion-dollar bets on cannabis companies that have things in the pipeline. And I have a news clipping up here. I forgot about this. It's not GW Pharma anymore because they were acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. So it's that's going to be very interesting to watch because, again, Epidiolex is a medicine. To the extent there's other cannabinoid candidates that can be shepherded through clinical trials and show efficacy, I think you're going to start seeing more of the Pfizers of the world having an arm of their companies that operate in that space. With respect to innovations, what are people going to continue to do with the glut of CBD that exists post-Farm Bill? I think there've been a lot of creative solutions as to how to continue to monetize that now that there's too much of it, whether it's converting it to different cannabinoids, developing different processes to basically salvage what is now something that's been heavily diluted from a price point. It's going to be very interesting to see what certain clients that operate in that space continue to do while not running afield of the Farm Bill as it currently exists.
No, thank you. Yeah, and to your point about Pfizer, last year there were two significant acquisitions within the cannabis and pharmaceutical industry. Where coincidentally each was valued, I think, at $79 billion. And significant money at play. So thank you all for your expertise, your unique perspective on the industry and innovation in the industry. Steve, one thing that I'd like to do is I neglected to shout out, I'm so eager to get these conversations going, is our sponsor today, ASTM, and particularly in their cannabis standards. ASTM is over 100-year-old organization that is focusing on establishing standards and collaboration between industry experts across the globe. And shout out right there again to ASTM International. They have a great white paper that they published last year that's actually, it's about Delta 8. And the focus again is on consumer safety, patient safety, and an industry best standard. So if you go to CannabizMD and you go to our science and technology category under best practices, you'll be able to download this white paper from ASTM. So again, shout out to ASTM International, their cannabis standards and services. So Steve, I'm very curious if you, as we get the Q&A started, again, you're going to ask the Qs and our esteemed panel members are going to have the As, but where did we come in on those polls? I'm curious as to, I saw it pop up.
Yep. Can you, okay. I'm not sure if you can see that. Can everyone see that? So it's a nice cross section, but I think the majority from ancillary service providers. Then you have, a split between people exploring the cannabis industry, and then of course science and research, which is really the core, I think, of the conversation here, and then healthcare providers fourth. So it's great to see it kind of a broad range of people in interest. Yeah. Let me address a couple of questions that came up, and I think it goes to the standards that ATSM is involved in leading. But the question from Alexandra De Palma from the group, she asked, how do we handle the safety and education of new cannabinoids that become popular or trendy. And, you know, as we at CannabizMD, we're all about medical cannabis education. That's our platform. There are some interesting new minor cannabinoids coming out that I think maybe some people haven't heard of, right? But like beyond CBD, CBDA, CBDV, CBT. So there's a number of these that are out there. Let me ask maybe Andrea or any others, you know, how do we handle the safety and education when these minor cannabinoids are coming out?
I mean, yeah, I think that like you know, like I mentioned earlier, like we don't make Delta 8 or THCP or THCO. I think those should be mainly held at high purity and like working through pharmaceutical networks and the university networks and understanding their safety and efficacy. So I think I don't know if that's like what the question's more related to, is like the ones that people are making that have toxic, or sorry, not toxic, euphoric or whatever, you know, euphoric effects. But otherwise, like the other ones, like I'm not sure. Like the good news is, like, I know Dr. O, you mentioned something about like overdosing, I think, or something. I think I heard you were talking about that a little bit. But like the part of our brain that like opiates cause you to overdose in, there's a certain part of your brain that like has a respiratory effect, controls respiration. Like cannabinoids don't interact with that part of the brain. So like I'm always less concerned about how someone's going to hurt themselves with cannabinoids. What I'm worried about is how people are going to hurt themselves with cannabinoids that aren't pure. So like if you're taking Delta 8 or THCP or THCO from someone who made it in their kitchen or in their garage and then selling it at your, like, you know, local gas station or whatever, like those are the ones I worry about. And how do we control that is, I mean, really open to, I'd love to see what the panel thinks about it too. I don't really know how I personally can control it aside from like them revisiting the Farm Bill, which I really don't want to happen either. So I don't know, I'm interested to see what the rest of the panel has to say.
Let me come in right quick, and I totally agree with Dr. Baillo. As we do not have a cannabinoid receptor in the stem cell rapid nucleus. That's part of the brain that has opioid, whereby the dopamine keeps producing more receptor. And as you're taking this opioid, that is where overdose comes. We don't have that cannabinoid receptor at that part of our brain. That's why it's very difficult for us to overdose on cannabis. And when it comes to exactly what she said is the key, we are not afraid of overdosing on cannabis. You feel crappy a little bit, then a couple of hours, you will be fine. Is the way they are making it. I mean, we are using acid to make, some folks are using acid to make this compound. If it's not remediated properly, this acid goes into patient's body. My other issue is with the minor cannabinoid. These are great stuff. A data just came out recently talking about CBGA, CBDA as potential to have ability to help with SARS virus, which is the virus where the COVID-19 belongs to. So we can use some of these minor cannabinoid for so many things. Really, this plant, this agents, the plant is using it to protect itself or to defend itself. You are what you eat. When whatever the plant is using this agent for, when we take it in, that's what we are using it for. But minor cannabinoids are produced in very small quantities in the plants. A lot of them are very small quantities. But we are getting to that level where we are trying to manufacture them like the new thing. We have to be careful in that. And how do we go about that? Education, having folks on your team that knows not just how this medicine works, that knows the route of administration, that knows what is going on. That's gonna be the difference that's gonna separate the good companies from people that are gonna get sued. It's gonna be as simple as that, for you to not be able to understand that some of these things are medicine. It's gonna be education and knowing the science behind it, how it works. That's my take. Education.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. O. No, I appreciate it. And just before I pass it back to Jackie, I think before it even gets there, it's really about sourcing these minor cannabinoids and looking for the companies that are maintaining a standard already above what may not even exist out in the industry, whether it's coming to your company, Andrea, to source the minor cannabinoids, or Jordan, what you put in your trials. So great, thanks for addressing that. Jackie, back to you to wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, thank you to the panel members, Jordan, Matt, Dr. O, and Dr. Baillo. This was tremendous. I hope everybody who's attended has taken away something new. I think we dropped a lot of new science and different acronyms. And again, thank you all for joining us today. So to close out, I want to introduce folks who may not be familiar to CannabizMD's sister social enterprise, TPAD, where CannabizMD is focused on helping to fill the void of cannabis science and policy education. And what TPAD does is provides opportunity for education. So I founded TPAD in 2019, and it is an event-based company that, again, proceeds from TPAD's support the TPAD Fellowship Program, and you can learn more about that at tpad.co. What the fellowship program is all about. So we're in the midst of raising money and looking for partners to join and collaborate with us, is that a qualified TPAD fellow will go through foundations in cannabis science and policy education curated by CannabizMD. They will then have a paid position, a small stipend in the cannabis industry, so that not only we're providing opportunity via education, but actually getting that hands-on work experience in the industry. And so we have a TPAD coming up in DC. We are going to be in Maryland, Hyattsville, Prince George's County, celebrating 420, obviously on April 20th. And we're talking to partners now who we're going to be looking to go to Atlanta, New York, Florida, and LA. So again, you can learn more about TPAD on tpad.co. And that wraps up our program we have coming up. If you take a look at CannabizMD.com, you will see a schedule we have of programs coming up for the balance of the year. We're going to continue these webinars. And then we have a day-long event that's through COVID. They've been virtual, where on a Saturday, we have a keynote speaker in September. It was Dr. Ethan Russo. And from there, we transition into three different roundtable discussions. The first focuses on clinical and research applications of medical cannabis. Then we transition to regulatory considerations for healthcare providers using cannabis in their practices, as well as research. And then we transition to the third roundtable, which is what we've been talking about today, is where we're headed and what exciting innovations are ongoing in the industry. And again, if anybody's not in the industry, they really don't have an understanding of all the innovation that is ongoing. And it's an incredibly exciting space to be. I do also want to correct myself, as those M&A, the merger and acquisition, which is so much going on in the space right now. And Matt spoke to that Pfizer acquisition. It wasn't $79 billion. It was close to $7 billion. So I added a few $1 billion, but still underscores the space that we're in, and organizations like ASTM and those of us that are here today, that all of us, whether you're on the panel or you're an attendee, are focused on establishing industry best standards before it becomes whatever happens to federal deregulation, is that the industry is strong and good, and we're all working together to advance cannabis science and policy. So thank you to everybody for joining, and we will see you again soon on a Zoom somewhere soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.